Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Tusknot channel. Thank you for joining us once again. I have with me today a new friend of mine. Her name is Deb McPherson. She's in London, England. She's been researching her family history through DNA genetics and other methods. She's come up with some quite surprising results, very surprising to her and her family. And uh, and I think all McPhersons everywhere are going to be very interested in this. Thanks for joining us, Deb. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, Ray. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. I've seen you. I found you through some comments on Facebook groups, right? You seem to have a neat angle on this. Very intriguing to me, which is the kind of thing I'm looking for here on the TouchNut channel. So, what have you found, Deb, and why was it so surprising?
Oh, well, Ray, I've been researching my family history for about 5 years now,
Uh-huh.
but I have been very lucky to find a fifth cousin once removed who's been very helpful, and I'll tell you more about him in a minute, as well
Okay.
as another cousin in Scotland, a third cousin whose ancestors married a McPherson woman. And between us, we've been researching quite a bit about our family. Um, what was surprising to us, and this is something common to all DNA testers or something to be aware of, I guess, is you never know what you're going to find when you do a DNA test. And
Mm.
my youngest brother and I both did DNA tests on Ancestry. And
Yeah.
then by paper trail research through Ancestry, we discovered another cousin in Canada. And he at that point hadn't done a DNA test, so I asked if he'd consider it. And
Yeah.
after a while, fortunately for me, he did. In the meantime, I heard about family tree DNA, and so I encouraged my youngest brother to do one of the early Y DNA tests. So it wasn't the Y700 at that point,
Oh, right.
but
Okay.
the McPherson clan group, yeah, they were very kind and helped us. I don't know if you've noticed, but on family tree DNA, sometimes the groups that you join, they have a little bit of money in the pot to help people that maybe can't afford, a lot of money for the test.
Oh,
So
no, I didn't know that.
yeah, no, it's really helpful. And that's why people are also encouraged to help
Hmm.
donate to that sometimes if they've got an interest in it.
I see.
Um, yeah. So from that, we discovered some intriguing things, but it looked like my brother had an Irish badge called Niall of the Nine Hostages, who's said to be this legendary Irish king that lived in the what was then the north of Ireland, now Antrim, and some of his progeny also were around Donegal as well, apparently.
Now,
So
if I can, the word badge, please.
it's kind of a DNA haplogroup which is assigned to you.
Okay.
It's a very common one. It's
The
um,
badge.
I won't bore you with the numbers, but I think it's RM222. And
Okay.
when you get that, you could be almost anything. So that was but it was clear at that point that we were the cuckoo in the clan because we our DNA trail comes from Ireland into Scotland, and that's the key difference between us and those who are related to the Highland McPhersons of the Badenoch.
Okay.
Um,
Excuse me. So that badge, right? The word badge, I want to come back to. That's something, a historical designation or something they use. Is that right? Or something?
oh no, it's just something that family tree DNA assign
Right.
you. It's like a little icon which
Yep.
shows that your DNA comes from an Irish branch known
Okay.
to be associated with this legendary kingdom. Now, a
Right.
lot of people, some people don't believe he actually existed, but the point, and some people do, and we've joined another family tree group there who have helped us with our
Okay.
extensive research. But the point is, this DNA exists. So, as a result of this intriguing amount, I encouraged my brother to do the big Y test.
Yeah.
So, and once we did that, we got our results and we found, yes, we're actually fully Irish and we belong to um, a branch of this guy who's the progenitor of our DNA. But our earliest known ancestor actually looks to be one of his sort of offspring. And we're talking like 5th to 9th century, but our
Wow.
DNA came to Scotland according to the family tree DNA testing service.
Hmm.
They estimate our earliest known ancestor to have arrived in Scotland about 1750, and that ties in pretty much within 13 or so years, so almost exactly within our paper trail to our earliest known um, McPherson ancestor, who was a guy called Hugh John McPherson, born in 1763
Hmm.
in a village called Strawn in Aberdeenshire.
Hmm.
And we do have a little bit of a paper trail beyond him, but it's and that comes from parish records and ancestry records, but it's less clear. But we think that our Hugh, born in 1763, was probably he's the one whose DNA split. And as I say, what I've discovered is DNA can in men can change every 3 to 5 generations, or maybe every 80 years or so.
Really?
Uh, yeah. So in fact, I was at a meeting with the O'Doherty branch the other night to try and understand some of family tree DNA terminology for the men's big Y testing. And one
Yeah.
of their speakers said that he and his father are actually have formed a whole new haplogroup, just like my brother and our cousin in Canada.
Hmm.
So it can happen a little bit quicker than you think.
Right.
Um,
Hmm.
yeah. So
So,
anyway, so
so we've
that's
got,
how we came
so
to
we,
know that we were, this new tree.
right.
It was
So you've
just
got an Irishman. An Irishman is in Scotland. We don't know why. No, not
yeah.
only don't know why he's there, but we don't know why he's got a McPherson name either. Or we
No,
don't
so
know why your McPhersons go back to him, I should say.
well, he was, yeah, we don't know for sure, but somehow he ended up in Aberdeenshire at
Hmm.
this particular point in history, and it was around, the whole uh, Jacobite
Sure.
uprising, and he'd come from Ireland somehow. So the the branch of the DNA we come from, supposedly in Ireland, links us to um, a clan called Conai, and their founder was the one of the sons supposedly of this Nile called Gulban. I can't say that I'm pronouncing any of this correctly,
It's okay.
but
Yeah. Go
this
on.
prince, he's also linked to he and his brother are linked to the Odocotes. We're not Odocotes, but we come from that same sort of strand, and our branch um, branched off into like three separate groups in the 12th century, and then us in 1750 formed this whole new branch. And when you look at the family tree DNA big Y testing,
Yeah.
what they call the block tree, you can see we've got um, close DNA cousins to the McAdams. Um, More than 7 men are related to us quite closely, but they're not our exact haplogroup, um,
Okay.
which is the type of DNA branch of the tree that you're assigned.
And now we're
Um,
talking about Scots when you say McAdams.
but these McAdams also come from an Irish line. I don't know if they know it yet, but so the ones that we're related to are some of the McAdams that did pave the road in Scotland, but they're only our DNA cousins.
Of course
We,
they are. If you, yeah.
what we need is for more McPherson men to test in general, but also more men who think they have ancestry in the north of Ireland or Donegal to test as well. And for that, I guess for American men who, it's quite a big task because you have to get out of America first. So you're going back
Hmm.
beyond the 15th, 16th century, aren't you? And
Yes.
quite often. So it's quite hard work. I've just been really lucky. My fifth cousin once removed and my brother Hamish are exact matches for the big Y test. And Greg's done a lot of research as well. And there are some theories about how our Irish ancestors, possibly ended up in Scotland.
Okay.
our earliest known ancestor, Hugh, was there in 1763 born, but he was born to a father who'd obviously been there before him. And so we don't know exactly how long we've been in Scotland, but
Yeah.
it'll be so what we would need is to find 8th to 20th cousins. So people born between 1100 and 1600, or 1150 and 1600, because they're the ones who would tie us into our specific branch.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, but some of the theories, there's about 3 theories we've looked at, and one of them is that we might be hidden McGregors. The McGregors are
Hmm.
another group from this Nile line that come from another princely son, supposedly.
Are they? Yeah.
um, Either way, these guys' DNA exists. So whether they were actual princes or they
Right.
ruled, we're not sure. But they were definitely dominating forces, and they ruled around sort of like they raided all across the western Scottish seaboard along with the northeast of the top of Northern Ireland. So
Yes.
they were around, and I guess either warfare, fighting, brought them across. But one of the other things, so we did present our DNA to the McGregor group on Family Tree DNA, and they had a look at our DNA, and they
Hmm.
they don't think we're related to them in terms of that strand. So we don't. So that is a theory, but we don't believe it's to be true, and neither do they. The other theory is that we came over during this early medieval Gaelic kingdom period called the Del Riata. And
Hmm.
again, I'm probably pronouncing that very well.
Yes.
But at that time, and I think there's some theories that at that time, being Gaelic was more important than whether you were Scottish or Irish. So you see a lot of
Right.
mixing and migration going on at that period as well.
Yep.
Um, so that's a possible likely scenario. And then the third theory is that we were part of a dowry of an ancient Irish princess who married a MacDonald in Scotland, so from the
Yes.
west, and
Yep.
that these men were like mercenaries from Scotland who'd been um, subsumed into service, and then she brought them as a dowry
Right.
when she married. And there are records that show that she did marry and that she brought with her a dowry of warrior men called McPhersons, but they were described as not of the Badenoch McPhersons.
Yes, I
Um,
read that. And she's an Okayan. Am I saying that right?
Okay, yeah, Anne O'Kane, and she married a MacDonald chief.
Yes.
But the problem with that theory is that we're not sure from the records. Um, it would have to be that we were from Ireland going to Scotland, but mostly the mercenaries that were employed, and they were often called gallowglass. That's another terminology for them. I
Uh,
discovered they were
yes.
Scottish going to Ireland, and then they were either
Yeah.
pressed into service or they willingly took up service, paid service against the British, and or vice versa. I think it was quite a confusing time. Um, in terms of history. But we also, and that was, going on in the medieval times. And our line goes from early medieval Irish history right through to middle to late before we hop over into Scotland. But by
Right.
the time my ancestor is my fifth great grandfather, this Hugh McPherson, born in 1763, certainly by the 1700s, we're all crofters and farmers, no sign of any warriors. So we're a bit like, we're not sure that that would be a good theory. And I think, as
Yep.
you read, the people who even, and our haplogroup is discussed in this document by O'Kane and I forget the other name, but they're also researchers
Yes.
at
Man, I read it. I
um,
read it 3 times too, but okay. Yes.
yeah. Anyway, um, I'm just going to have a wee look and see who they are. Yes, Kane and O'Neill, and I should pay tribute to them because they've been also very helpful, and um, they had a look at our DNA, and
Yep.
I think the jury is out on that, even amongst that community. So we're
Right.
a bit of
Right.
an anomaly, really.
But you do, but there is a small paragraph there in a record that says some McPhersons came over in that dowry of 140 men that were for some reason known as McPhersons, and also these people who wrote that seemed to know enough to make the distinction that they were not of the Badenoch
Yes,
group of McPherson. No, I should say group of McPhersons. Mostly all are. Um, it,
true. But
but
again, these are also all written down in very early records,
yeah,
some of which have since been found to be
I saw that.
have errors, unfortunately.
Right,
So
but I just
it's
I think
romantic.
personally, when someone says one word and then again uses that same word again in the next sentence to clarify something about the first word, it seems to me that they can be both mistakes. But
True. I mean, I think they were making the distinction that there were known warriors called
yeah.
McPhersons, but they weren't of the Badenoch clan.
Huh.
But we don't really know what other people were masquerading as McPhersons
Right.
or what.
Yep.
um, yeah, so we think it's more likely that we came over in the Dal Riata period
Okay.
because there was a lot of movement then. But how we got from like the Western Isles into Aberdeenshire and why is the gap. And that gap
Sure.
will probably only be filled by more men who test that match us, and then we can plot their timeline. And if and the other important thing is to build a proper tree, but create a tree somewhere on Ancestry or MyHeritage. Unfortunately, Family Tree DNA's tree building function has been taken down, and they're relying on
Yes.
forget what MyHeritage is it,
I
so you
think
can
they
build.
went back to them. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so what I do is if any man tests and is close to us, I have a
Yes.
look. The test will show not only the haplogroup number, it will also show whether or not they've done any autosomal testing.
Hmm.
Um, and the autosomal test is the mix of your DNA from both parents, obviously, and
Yes.
that only shows you that's only any good. That's good if you're looking for long lost fathers or mothers or brothers or cousins,
Right.
but um, if it won't show you really which side necessarily, it's a bit trickier. Whereas the big Y shows you just your father's
Okay.
geographical timeline. But when men test and they get assigned their haplogroup, if they've done an autosomal test and they've listed their earliest known ancestor's name,
Yep.
which may or may, in our case, may or may not be at McPherson, for example, because we don't know who we
Sure.
really were. Then I look on Ancestry and I do a search in the matches list on a name and a tree. That's how
Oh
I
yeah.
do it. And
Right.
sometimes I've come up with intriguing finds. And for example, we do seem to have a lot of people with McAdam as
Hmm.
cousins in their name.
Yep.
So there must have been some sort of intermarriage there. Um, so that's
Yeah.
that's how I try and do it sometimes. It's very time consuming and it is a bit of a rabbit hole.
Right. Well, let me ask you this. So obviously you've looked at this, but so if this man Hugh or his parents left Ireland, surely someone related to them did not leave or and are still there or something. Is that
Yes,
anything?
yes, but because so when people join the McPherson clan, I understood that, they can take the name on for many reasons. And so what's happened in this case is this person, our earliest known ancestor or his parent, were
Hmm.
accepted into the clan for whatever reason. And at that time, the men who were accepted into the clan often would take on the clan chief's name. So of
Yep.
course he became a McPherson, in
Well,
name and title
right.
eventually. And then his children became McPhersons. And so
Sure.
they're 200 years later, they don't know that they weren't really McPhersons, if you know
Uh,
what I mean.
of course, but I was getting towards the DNA left in Ireland, right?
Oh, well,
Right.
yes, because
This is what
we
I meant.
don't, yeah, yeah. So that's another reason for more testing, because we would then, we might be find we're related to um, Gallagher's
Right.
or
Sure.
Boyles or whoever. That's
So,
their last name now. So the living men who test may
you're
have
right.
completely different last names from us for sure.
And this is
Um,
just not found yet, only by your family, only by this man in Canada, is it? And
yes,
Greg and Hamish and yourself all
yes,
are the only known holders of this DNA. Is that a correct
yes.
statement right now?
Yes, of this haplogroup.
Yes.
So not the
Right.
DNA per se, but the haplogroup. So the
Okay.
branch tree that we come from. And
Yep. Subclade.
yeah,
Subclade.
yeah.
Okay.
So
Hmm.
it's great to be unusual, but it's also
Right. Of
slightly frustrating because now we don't,
course.
we can't determine a lot about our really early ancestry,
Yeah,
except it's very old.
I can see you're sort of rowing about to different shores trying to get accepted by somebody desperate to belong, maybe. That's what I'm thinking. I'm a big analogy guy, so it seems what you're doing, and it must be a frustrating journey, but I wish you well in it. She needs help, folks. She needs some testing done by McPherson males, any males really, to find this number and where it can and grow it some so it can be studied. These numbers need, these haplos need large ranks of them in order to start to make them valuable, right?
Mm. You do, yes, and you get a lot of help if you join an appropriate group.
Hmm.
So if you're a McPherson, join the Family Tree DNA McPherson group.
Yep.
If you have any Irish ancestry, then there are quite a few other different Irish groups. But the key thing is to get tested to as high a level as you can, really. And I guess we found a lot of interesting things along the way. So it's really, if you love ancestry and you love history and you like finding out what's who's come before you to understand a little bit of about yourself, I
Yes.
think it's um it's a very interesting pastime. And as most people who do it know, it takes up a bit of time and leads to a lot more questions than there are answers. But
Yes. It can help out those that are in the know with this though too. To have the test done is a huge favor to others that are in the know about this and are I know what to do with the numbers.
yes,
Might say, what am I going to do with it? But you're valuable. Your result is valuable to the pool of people, folks. It really is. You're
yeah,
doing a great service to others by doing that. And even if you have no idea what an M347 is or whatever, that's irrelevant. You are helping them out by adding yours to that pool of study, right?
definitely.
Um,
Um,
yeah, and I did a talk last year with Bruce McPherson, the FTDNA volunteer administrator, uh, to try to get people familiar with some of the testing and get through some of the maybe intimidation about what the heck test is this and what's an MTD and why can't women seem to go back in history, but yes, they can in some ways. And so we talked that over and tried to get people familiar with the basic terms. And
yeah,
there's a second one follow up to that about McPherson and DNA in general. So look for those folks. That'll help you get a little more knowledgeable about this subject, I hope. That's what it was intended for.
yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I am, it's interesting because I am a female helping my brother to test, but I have also tested my female line, and
Okay.
that's why I'm, nearly 50% Scottish. And a lot of that comes from my mother's side and also Scandinavian. So, and weirdly, my mother's side also came from Aberdeenshire, but
Hmm.
there's no suggestion that they were DNA linked um,
Yep.
or married. Yeah.
Okay. What would
Yeah.
you say about the mtDNA, just briefly, if you can? A woman who has no male relatives, maybe who has really nothing to nowhere to go in that in pursuing the why, what can mtDNA help you with or find for you?
So that's a test that looks at female chromosomes,
Okay.
uh, the Y. And so this is, you're looking to see who your mother's back in time is.
Oh, okay.
And it can help you with different brick walls, but it won't show you cousins. Again, there's a big difference between the sort of specific female and male test that family tree DNA offers,
Yep.
and autosomal testing, which is the DNA that comes from both your parents.
Hmm.
So for me, I was trying to find a fifth great grandmother who was a Davidson. Most
Oh,
of my females are Donalds and Wilsons, and then the fifth one is a Davidson. And there's a theory that I don't have. I have a lot of Scandinavian DNA, but I was trying to find out whether this grandmother maybe had come from Sweden or Denmark,
yep.
um, which ruled around that time, 1800s, and whether or not she maybe had been forcibly brought to Scotland,
Yeah.
because there's another theory about this with some Scottish links, is the Vikings kind of raided, took the women back to Sweden, and then sometimes the DNA, their descendants then came back to Scotland, so the DNA gets quite unraveled there as well.
Yes.
Um,
Sure.
but I was also trying to find who this woman's parents were and whether
Okay.
or not I could spot any other Scandinavian names that I could then research on Ancestry, type
Right.
it in autosomal matches for cousins to see if I could find anybody that way.
Yes.
Sometimes you're lucky. Yeah. So
Interesting.
yeah. What I did find that we probably our early female ancestors came from families that were some of the first Mormons in America, actually.
Is that right?
Yeah, so lots of
Huh.
unexpected finds along the way.
Right. Interesting. Yeah, I'm here with the McPhersons and the Hattons and everything else, but and my name is McHatton, and I turned out to be an I1, and with Argyle in Argyle in the year 1000 about. So I'm some sort of a Nordic transplant, but yet I ended up with McGillahatton and such. My name McHatton comes from McGillahatton Moore and all those, back into that. So somehow that may be the same. A man took that local name or something,
Hmm,
possibly.
you never know.
Yeah. So this is what happened. So and the McAdams are the road builders. So they're sharing your DNA because of an origin perhaps pre surnames, that kind of
Uh,
thing, right?
yes,
Somewhat.
although they come from an adjacent
Oh, oops.
branch, and we share the same progenitor, as in a much earlier ancestor from several hundred years ago.
Okay.
So, so that's why we're like DNA cousins, as it were.
Oh, I
Um,
see.
yeah, yeah.
Right.
But and I have contacted some of them, and they don't know much. I think unless people build trees that are several hundred years back, and that's where it gets tricky, especially in Ireland, to find records like that. In Scotland, you're quite lucky because not only do you have ancestors brought up a lot of the records and census records, which are equally important, marriage records, death records, but if you can get to the registry office there or write to them, or like us, we found a cousin who was willing to go for us, which was amazing, then they can investigate the parish records, which were aligned to the churches. So you'd have like the formal government records, and then you'd have so and so parish records.
Okay.
Um, yeah. And on Scotland's People, I think it is, you can also look up various parish records, and there you get like different information about what was going on at a particular time frame, who was doing what to whom, and which person had been naughty with who, and who was
Yep.
suspected of fathering X. So they can be quite funny and interesting to read. And if you're very lucky, you might spot an ancestor, but it does take a lot of trawling through.
It does. Yeah, you invest an awful lot of chaff to get to the kernel. Absolutely.
Yeah.
My cat's jumping up here. I don't know if you just heard him. He yowled his head off coming in here. Uh,
Ah,
my
that's
cat,
not the cat.
that's Manly. Hey, Manly. That's
Ah,
Manly. I'm
and
surprised
where's
you
your
didn't hear him
kitty?
yowling. Have you, we only have about maybe 4 or 5 minutes left, Deb. Have you gotten a hold of like maybe the Clan McPherson Museum or the Clan McPherson associations and things, trying to get a little help getting the word out about your quest?
Uh,
They might,
I know who they are, and I've looked on their websites and stuff. I guess I'm not sure how much time they would want to invest in helping us to find our Irish ancestors.
well,
But I could do that.
well, just to, tell them you want a little note in their museum. Hey, if you're here looking around and you've
Yeah.
had your DNA tested or haven't, you certainly want people that not to find this number. This number, if they find that number on their test, is they're going to refer to you through FTDNA.
Well, our specific number is not that one. I can tell you what it is, but
Which is
it
your
won't mean anything to anyone really at the moment.
it's your
We're
788,
Correct.
788?
15788 is our family tree DNA big Y test number,
Right.
or our haplogroup, really, or our haplotype. So,
And
yeah, I mean, basically, a haplogroup is your genetic population group. It's your inherited genetic
yeah,
DNA marker. So it's
yes,
passed down from a common ancestor, father to
right,
father. And then the haplotype is the linked genetic markers inherited together from one parent. So, yeah. But anyway, the key point is that our ancestry is Irish, potentially from this ruling Antrim kingdom, who then migrated across into Western Scotland and eventually, and that was in the Middle Ages, and then eventually by 1750,
sure,
um, our well, my fifth great grandfather, it's my fifth cousin once removed's fourth great grandfather. And the fact that he and my brother match on this big wide test is amazing because we'd already worked out the paper trail to each other
yeah,
by normal record searches first, um, as opposed to finding someone who is a DNA cousin match and then going from there.
right.
So yeah, it's been quite an amazing journey, and I have to pay a lot of tribute to my cousin Greg for really, taking part and just being an amazing support, and also our other cousin in Scotland, Lawrence. So he's not a McPherson, but he's part of the group.
Right. Yeah, so I think that the theory probably, I mean, I agree with the possibility of coming through the Del Riata times, which was started at about 503. Del Riata began with the McGurk brothers and overthrew, like you say, and eventually, for some reason, adopted a name and ended up over at Aberdeenshire. Um, there's
Yes, but
certainly,
we come from Ireland, so you have to be a bit careful about that one. I think the most likely situation is that we were part of this Del Riata
yes,
migration. But whether they went there and then came back as warriors because they'd already got into the McPherson clan before 1701,
okay,
but our ancestor only appeared, or our haplogroup only formed in 1763. So it could be that his father was Irish and knew he was Irish and knew he was part of the McPherson clan, but he'd come from somewhere else in the Highlands. Do you know what I mean? He may not have
yes,
been in that area, or their descendants, their forebears may have come from somewhere else.
right.
Um, Probably, possibly even Inverness if they went that way. It's hard to know.
Well,
Again, that's why we need more distant um, cousins to test because I have another brother, but there's not much point in me testing him because we'll just get the same result. So we need a wider net of
yes,
McPherson men and also men in general with potentially Irish heritage, northern from the north.
Amo Cahan. I like that whole little episode there. It's quite a neat story. Another guy that I was on here with, another researcher, I should say, um, Jacob Queen also had detailed that part about Clan McQueen. It involves lots of clans. That episode or that event really, you might say, has a lot of ripples in time right until present day in families.
Yes, that certainly had a big impact on the community.
Yep.
Um,
Well, thank you for your time today. I really appreciate it coming on here. So everybody get your testing kits out, do your swabbing, send them in, please. We're gonna run out of time here in another 3 seconds or four. So thank you, Deb, and appreciate your time coming on today. Take
you're
care.
welcome.
Touch not everyone. Bye bye.